Okay, this is a little bit late, but I say better late than never, so let's do this. Hello and welcome back to the Looking Glass World. My name is Aradhana Mathews and today we are looking at my best and worst books of 2023. So a little life update for you here. There's been some changes since my last few videos, one being that I got LASIK. So now I can see everything without having to wear glasses or contact lenses for the first time in 20 years. So yay. And the second thing is I have jumped back into the full-time job scene. And in my time as a freelancer, I had forgotten how insanely busy and crazy that can be. So my free time for recording is going to go down drastically, but I'm still going to do my best to keep creating content. Okay, life updates aside, let's begin. We'll start with my top 5 books. And at number 5 in the year 2023, we have Yellowface. I've made a video about this because the premise of this book and how it mirrors reality really spooked me out, but you can go see that video if you want. This is a very, very interesting read. The only thing I didn't love about it is that it's written in very casual language. So I have a personal pet peeve of, authors narrating in a style that is very similar to how we converse, because I like a certain creative take when it comes to narrations. But it's basically a publishing thriller. So it dives into the world of plagiarism, fame, the nature of the publishing industry that exists in today's world, and the kind of authors that become successful in it. How much of this is actually good writing versus good publicity, the diversity quotient, all of these gray areas and slightly problematic things that goes into that with the story of 2 authors, one who is white and one who is of Asian descent. Not a very big book. As you can see, I've taken many notes because there's a lot there, but it's very, very engaging and I loved it. At number 4, we have a non-fiction read, which is in history. My list will never be complete without a history book in it, but it is An Era of Darkness. Now, when I say history, it's not history in the same sense that William Dalrymple writes history, which is from just the chronicling of a certain aspect, a certain time period, certain people in history. But the whole book is more like an argument, but the best kind that I've ever seen. And it's written by Shashi Tharoor. It's sort of a counter-argument to anybody who says there was anything good about colonialism in India. Now, at the face of it, you might be like, of course there wasn't anything good about colonialism in India, but I'm speaking to you here in English. We wear English clothes. There's a lot of post-colonial culture that has come into us, even from a morality perspective, where it's become so ingrained that we believe it's Indian culture. So all of these things, Tharoor kind of breaks down with irrefutable numbers, data, and facts about how dangerous and how destructive the British were and what they did to India and the long-lasting impacts of that. Here also you can see I have 5 million notes that I've taken because it's every chapter. I was like, what? I didn't know this. And the crazy thing is, Tharoor wrote this as a follow-up to his famous Oxford speech, where he thought that he was saying things that everybody knew and then realized, oh my goodness, a lot of people are supporting this because it's new information, or it's not information that we knew in so much detail. So even I remember my history textbook saying things like the British were able to win over India because they have superior artillery, superior organization, in spite of being a textbook that is talking about the negatives of colonialism. It still managed to paint the British in a better light, like they were superior somehow and we were just the losers, which is not true. And this book tells you why. One of the things I will address from this book that I think everyone should know, just to give you a taste of what this goes into, is the famines. So India experienced several large-scale devastating famines during the colonial period, and never was it that bad in any other period in history. Yet when you read accounts of this famine and what was going on, the argument is usually that, the Indian population is too vast, there were too many mouths to feed, World War II was going on during one of these very big famines and stuff like that, so there was no resources. We did our best, but the administration just couldn't keep up with the Indian population numbers. That was the very common argument that was going on. All wrong. If the population was such a problem, why was there never a famine before or after the British came at that scale? The answer is in this book. Everybody, especially every Indian, read this book. And even better if non-Indians read it, because it is the truth of what happened. And I feel like that's not taught to us well enough at a school level. At number 3, we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Oh my God, what a book. Now, I should say that it may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it is just, to me, an example of the power of storytelling. This is something that I admire a lot, which is when I see authors tell you a seemingly simple story, but it really goes straight to your soul and you will remember it for life. That is what this book does. So it's basically set in a cafe in which you can time travel, but there's a bunch of rules in place that make it pretty much impossible to accomplish anything. So while people were very excited about it at first, later on they were like, you know what, it's not worth it. I can't leave this cafe. Nothing I do will change the future. What is the point anyway? And if I don't, finish up my thing in a matter of 2 minutes before my coffee gets cold, I have very serious consequences that I might have to deal with. I'm like speechless. I don't know how the author did it. Just taking a moment and extending it by a few minutes and causing those few minutes to make all the difference in these few protagonists' lives is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I've not seen that kind of powerful storytelling that plays with such a limited context in such an incredible way. So highly, highly recommend this one. This was an Instagram read that I picked up because I was seeing it everywhere, and it's totally worth the hype for sure. Please read this. Now we're coming to the top 2. I chose this one because it is one of the most refreshing things that I have read in a world where history is taught from a certain narrative. I didn't even know that some of these things were so far from the truth, and this book showed me that. And the book that I'm talking about is Daughters of the Sun. This is another history book. It chronicles the lives of certain key women throughout different Mughal rules. So right from Babur's time to like Humayun, Shah Jahan, all of these people, some of the queens that existed during this time, we don't know any of their stories. We know one Mumtaz Mahal because Taj Mahal. Who is she? What is her story? We don't even know that. And there's an entire ornament and a wonder of the world erected in her name. But we know Shah Jahan because he's the one who built it. But beyond just being the muse or the person who inspired something, these women were out there doing things. They were out there conducting trade. Chandni Chowk in Delhi was built by Jahanara, who was Shah Jahan's daughter. She was the architect who designed the entire thing. Did you know that? Because I didn't. I didn't even know that Noor Jahan, who was Shah Jahan's father's last wife, so Jahangir's youngest and last wife, she was the one who built something that Shah Jahan used as inspiration for the Taj Mahal. And she built it with her own money in memory of her parents. So this book is seriously an eye-opener. I think everybody should read it, because what do we think is the reality, or was the reality in those days? The Mughal harems were extremely restricted places. Women never saw the light of day. The Parda system was repressive, and all these women belonged to just the one king. Their only job was to produce sons. They had no other role, and it sounds pretty miserable if you ask me. But no, there was a lot going on. So I said Noor Jahan, for example, she did not have any children with him. She used to go hunting for tigers. She conducted trade in her name, owned trade ships, owned plots of land and collected tax, used money to improve infrastructure in the kingdom, and did so much more. Her face was on coins. Why do we not know this? Is what I ask. And there's so much more, so many strong women who even ran administrative elements of the Mughal kingdom. Yes, there was a Padda. That didn't mean they had zero influence. They would even sign official documents sometimes. Other people would come, noblemen would come and ask for their counsel. Even behind the Padda, they would approve things that were very integral to the running of the empire, especially in the absence of the emperor. So these women were a lot more powerful than our conventional history teaches us that they were. And they also had a far more balanced approach towards like trauma, war, etc., because I know that there are other kingdoms where female honor, i.e. virginity, is prized above human life. So if somebody is captured, say, as a prisoner of war, the women would rather kill themselves than come back defiled by another man, but alive. Not the Mughals. At least the early ones. I mean, I think it's admirable because they treat any kind of prisoner of war the same. It's traumatic. Yes. It's horrible. Yes. You're stuck in an enemy camp. Who knows what is going on for both men and women, being tortured, raped, all of this every day. But if you manage to get rescued or you manage to make your way back home, like some of these queens did, you are welcomed back with open arms and allowed that space to heal and move forward with your life. That's just one of many very, very cool things about this book. So there's some badass women in Mughal history, and I urge everybody to read about them in this book. But before I come to my number one best book of 2023, I should say that there are many honorable mentions here, but I don't have time to get into all of them, so I've picked two for you, which I thought were really good books as well, definitely worth mentioning. And the first one is called Following a Prayer. It's about a little girl who gets lost, disappears in Karnataka for 3 days in a jungle, and comes back, and when she comes back, she refuses to speak. But why did she get lost in the first place? She got lost because she was a very 10-year-old girl or 11, 12, I'm not sure, somewhere around that age, I forget, but young girl. And she was being very chatty one day, bothering her grandmother while the grandmother was trying to pray, asking too many questions. So especially about God and things like that when she was praying. So the grandmother said, okay, if you want to find God, follow this prayer. So she does. And she gets lost. And she comes back and she refuses to speak. Her younger sister decides, I am going to get my big sister to speak no matter what. So she patiently tries and tries and tries, doesn't leave her sister's side until one day the sister writes only one thing, and that is, language is a lie. This book was written by a philosopher, and it is very evident in the way that the story is told. But why I picked this as one of the honorable mentions this year is because its protagonists are children. And so the philosopher takes you through some of the deepest questions that we ask, such as what or where is God? I'm very impressed by the way the author has broken down such complex philosophical ideologies into something that a 10-year-old child can understand. So definitely, and this book was gifted to me. I'm so glad I got it, and it's such an amazing read. So very, very cool book. The second thing that I want to show you in terms of honorable mentions is The Bandit Queen, which was also given to me by HarperCollins, The Bandit Queens, I'm sorry. And this is Parini Shroff's debut novel, and I loved it because it's just a lot of fun. It's about the stigma that comes onto widows, especially in more rural communities, and how one widow just decides, I am done. Especially because not only is she a widow, but the whole place is convinced that she killed her husband. And what happens because of it? Suddenly a woman is knocking at her door saying, can you help me kill my husband? Because he beats me and is a horrible person. So I don't know, this is very morally gray, but what I loved about it was that I like to see women fight back, because I personally am sick and tired of this bloody narrative of women being so weak all the time and victims and this and that. But this was just nice. It was beyond the thrill of murder, rumors, all of these things. And there are some moments that are a lot more serious. I still think that it made it to the honorable mentions list because it is a very good exploration of different facets of gender identity. So not just power between the male and the female and how that's perpetuated by society, but also a sense of community and how community can shape morality. I really love the way the Bandit Queens did this in a way that wasn't too heavy. In spite of all the domestic abuse and murders and etc., it still keeps you engaged in a way that's fun, in a way that you can process without feeling too emotionally drained, and is overall just a thoroughly entertaining read. My worst reads of 2023. Now, I say this with a lot of trepidation because I don't like hating on books except romance. maybe sometimes. But I generally value every author's effort in writing a book. Since I wrote a novella myself, I know what it takes from you. So I'm very hesitant to just trash books. So it takes a lot for me to say I really did not like this book. And with that, the first book that I have here is called The Alice Project. This was also given to me to review by HarperCollins, and I did not like it only because I have an issue with authors who get too scatological for no apparent reason. So I understand the importance of, like, for example, a war novel, historical fiction set in World War II, for example, is going to have a lot of like blood, trauma, this and that. I get it. It's part of the world that existed in that time. But it bugs me and quite honestly repulses me when it starts to become the defining factor of a book. I don't remember the story here, but I can remember how in-depth the author went in terms of describing like gross toilets and like squalor. Every possible thing that can come out of the human body is described in extreme detail in this book, and it was not for me. It was not doing anything for me for the story. No value whatsoever. I do not like being, things that are disgusting just for the sake of being disgusting. It has to lead me somewhere, and it has to have some value in the story. So for that, I really, I didn't want to not finish the book because it was given to me as a gift, but I couldn't get rid of it fast enough, and this is not going to be featured in my library. I don't like it. I think what is going to surprise everyone is the second book that I've chosen as my worst read of 2023, and that is Iyguy. I know people are going to hate me for this because it's such a popular book. I'm not saying it's a bad book. It's not bad in the way the other one was bad. If you've read this book, you know it's about the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. Look, it's so pretty and blue and pocket-sized, and it's a great gift to give someone. But the reason this made it to my list is because it actually gave me nothing of value. What I mean by that is, aside from this whole concept of what Ikigai is, which they also don't go into detail as much as I would have liked, because that's the only thing that I found interesting. It's something that I didn't know about. This whole balance of your passion, your mission, your profession, and your vocation, all of that coming together to find your Ikigai. I thought that was what the book is going to be about, using elements from obviously the base of Japanese culture, both in its origin and in the modern world, to see how that can be explored. But it was more data based on centenarians. For me, living to 100 is not a goal to start with, but the second bit of, okay, they're centenarians, but they're also very happy in life, and what did they do? I mean, surprise, surprise. They ate healthy, they stayed active, they have a good social life, and they sleep well. Who does not know that? Please tell me. I didn't find a single thing here that was you taught me something. So that's why this made it to my worst of 2023. And now, for my number one book of 2023. This book I will not only reread, but I will remember forever. It's one of the best books I've ever read, and that book is A Monster Calls. What a book! I bought the hardcover version because there are illustrations which are also very nice in this book. Such an overall beautiful read. But the premise is that it's about a little boy whose mom is terminally ill. He's aware that the situation is very serious, and he's very scared to face the possible loss of his mother. And he keeps having this recurring nightmare as a result of this whole situation that he can't seem to shake. And then one day, he is visited by a monster. And the monster says, I will tell you 3 stories, and after that, you will tell me a story. Each of these stories that the monster tells the little boy cover such a vast expanse of the experience of humanity. What is good? What is bad? If you do something wrong, but it's for the right reasons, are you in the wrong? Are you in the right? These are questions that a monster, through stories, communicates to a little boy who is in pain and who is afraid.